week's edition of the Ride Along Radio Show, the show where we give you the experience of riding in a virtual police car with two police veterans who have years of experience on the streets of Los Angeles. Years, and they're like dog years, believe me. So even though we probably actually have about 40, 45 years, it's probably like 100 years done someplace else. So I'm George Holt.
I'm Gil Contreras.
And this is Ride Along Radio. And so you will find that Gil and myself, sometimes we have varying opinions on things. Sometimes it happens.
What are you trying to say?
And although we are not knee-jerk police apologists, you will find that we are here to give you the police perspective on things.
That's right.
And we don't always agree with the police and what the police do. But we try to explain it to you when you have questions.
Because the mainstream media won't do that.
Well, they don't have the ability to do it or the desire.
Well, they don't have the desire. They could, if they wanted to, find people like us. Hey, there's an idea to help them out, but they'd rather just do it themselves. But the media is kind of left-leaning anyway. So they, in the new America.
Now, why do you suppose that is?
I don't know. I don't know. You have a lot of lefty professors, preaching stuff on university campuses, and college students now need safe places, and men want to go to the bathroom in the ladies' room.
What's wrong with that?
What's wrong with men in the ladies' room? Please, I raised a daughter. Okay, that would have never flew in my day when my daughter. But she's an adult now; she's on her own. So, but in the new America, cops are the bad guys, and criminals are the victims. And victims brought that shit on themselves.
That's the new America?
That's the new America.
Okay, is that victim blaming?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Well,
it's all because of racism, That's
you know what?
Sure.
And you say that lightly, but there's a case to be made for more than you are willing probably to acknowledge. But I agree, it's not all because of racism. There are people who tell you that it's all because of racism, and that's clearly not the case. So what we like to do is we like to start off with a recap of the last show in terms of like social media feedback, et cetera. What we talked about was the Terrence Crutcher shooting in North Carolina, Charleston.
Mm-hmm.
No, Terrence Crutcher actually. I'm sorry, Terrence Crutcher was shot in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Right. The other Keith Scott was shot.
Scott.
Yeah, he was shot in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Correct.
And so we touched on those. We offered our expertise based on facts known to us at the time. I have seen a lot of things on social media where people are saying that it was a gun, but it was planted. And there's a video that purports to show an officer reaching into his pocket and taking out a gun and throwing it onto the asphalt. And people jumped all over that. I mean, my Facebook feed was awash in people posting and tagging me in this video that allegedly showed this police officer reaching into his pocket, and this gun comes out and kind of like flutters to the ground.
Right.
Well, it turns out that was a black nitrile glove that you wear when you're dealing with crime scenes or situations where there may be blood present, et cetera. And he reached in his pocket to get something out, and when he pulled his hand out, the glove came out, and that's why it didn't bounce when it hit the ground. That's why it didn't make any noise when it hit the ground, et cetera, et cetera. But people jumped all over that. And I say that to point out how people are really, really quick now to jump on anything that looks shaky. Now, I understand why that is, but sometimes still you got to slow down and stop and think about that. One thing we were taught is if you were handling somebody's gun, that you were very, very careful with it, because you don't want to be throwing guns around and sticking them down in your front of your pants and all the rest of that stuff, because you don't know what condition that gun is in or whatever else.
Cops get nervous. When there's a gun that's not theirs, they just get nervous. And, I worked a cold case, and I actually went to was it Corcoran? Not Corcoran, the other one up there in Sacramento.
Folsom.
Folsom.
Yeah.
To do 2 days of interviews with somebody. And, the whole case rested on a gun. Was it suicide? Was it homicide? Guy's girlfriend kills herself.
Right.
It was a suicide or homicide. Well, the problem was the initial officers who came in, saw the gun, saw the girl, and then the officer actually wrote this in his report. He said, "I wanted to make the gun safe." That's what he wrote. So he picked up the gun.
Oh my God.
Dropped the mag, locked it back,
Wow.
and then set it on the dresser.
Because it was going to go off again?
I don't know what he thought. She was going to rise from the dead and pick it up, but
wow.
but that
he was nervous. He was nervous.
That blew the whole case because then when the detectives got there, he goes, "That's how you found the kid?" He said, "No, I did." Okay. Click.
Right. Exactly.
But now, where was it? And now placement of the gun was critical.
Important. Sure, it's key.
And they said, "Hey, it looks like somebody placed the gun." Yeah, the cop did.
Right, exactly. But nobody wanted to hear that part.
But right, and so homie went to prison.
Yeah, he did.
But
unfortunately, again, we once had we once enjoyed the what was it? The cloak of believability. But
I don't know if it was a cloak, but
it was a mantle. We wore the mantle of believability.
But at least if you testified to something in court.
It was typically
it was
your word.
accepted.
Your word had some gravity to it. And again, after many years of people not taking their oath the way they should take their oath in misconduct, etc., enough cases came up, and even though they didn't happen very often, just like all Catholic priests don't molest children, if it happens often enough and it becomes newsworthy, people are going to look at that and say, "Oh, well, that happens sometimes. At least they'll acknowledge it happens sometime," and then everybody gets looked at with a jaundiced eye. So that was so I bring that up to talk about something that's come up since we covered that last week. I don't know that any new things have come up, any new legal developments with either case.
But was there pushback from anything that we said or anything that I said?
Oh, yes.
There was?
Are you kidding me?
Yeah. I didn't think there was. I said.
Well, no, there was no pushback in terms of anything we said that was, this is why this goes this way. There was nobody who doubted anything we said procedurally. Okay. People just sometimes don't appreciate the way we express things. But there was a really good question that I want to address, because it's a question that I've heard, and you've heard it before too. And so this is Tianti Smith, and Tianti Smith wants to know, if the goal is de-escalation and protecting human life, what are your thoughts on the use of non-lethal ammunition by state and local law enforcement officers? Thanks. And so I asked, do you mean exclusively, as in cops would not carry lethal ammunition anymore? She comes back with a clarification, not exclusively, but at least the first 6 rounds. I'm just saying, if people are dying because cops are scared and shooting someone, no matter how damning circumstances seem to be justified, why not meet in the middle? Cops can still protect communities. Unarmed black and brown people can still live. And if a rubber bullet kills someone, they would have to be in extremely close range, therefore would likely be intentional. And rubber bullets seem to be cheaper too. And so now the city's budget can be reinvested into the black and brown communities to reduce poverty, which is really why crime happens. Thanks for responding. And Tianti Smith, thank you for your question. And I told you that I would answer this on air because it's kind of a long answer to talk about this. Here's the thing. Police officers already have less lethal platforms. Those less lethal platforms are beanbag launchers, they're tasers, things of this nature. For one thing, we don't ever want to mix up lethal and non-lethal ammunition in these platforms. This is why if I have a beanbag shotgun, nothing ever comes out of that shotgun except beanbags. Mm-hmm. It's even painted a different color,
right? So
that when I reach into it at night in the heat of battle and I go to grab it, it's the fog of war. It's either orange or it's green or it's yellow. It's something that lets me know that's not my shotgun. That's not the hammer of death I'm pulling out of that trunk. I'm pulling out a less lethal platform, and so that's what beanbags are carried in that. The same thing with tasers, etc. And this is how Johannes Meserly ended up. This is how Oscar Grant ended up dead, and Johannes Meserly ended up in prison. Right. Up in the BART shooting, is he mixed up his lethal and his non-lethal platforms because he drew them both with the same hand. Meaning to draw his taser, he drew his pistol, fired one round, killed Oscar Grant right there on the platform. So we don't ever want to put non-lethal and lethal ammunition in the same weapon system because you're asking for trouble that way. The other reason, the most important reason to me, is that if somebody knows that my first 6 rounds can't kill them, they are more likely to try to ambush me and my partner. They're more likely to try to take us on, because now I got 6 rubber bullets and the bad guy has got nothing but hot rounds coming out of his gun. So I'm sure you can see what a disadvantage that is to me. Man, I'm praying for that 7th round as I'm busting caps. I'm praying for that, come on, number 7, till I get to something lethal. By that time, I may not make it. Maybe I can't squeeze that trigger 6 times, 7 times to get to those lethal rounds. So it's impractical in that sense too. Now, what you could do maybe, if it were not for the not mixing the platforms, is carry a separate magazine or something. But even then, it's not a good idea. It's just not a good practice, and it's asking for trouble. And there are already separate non-lethal platforms that we use for that. And that's why you don't see police officers carrying rubber bullets. I don't think I've ever actually seen a rubber bullet. Not that you could fire from a handgun.
No, I haven't seen that either. But there was just a shooting in El Cajon a couple days ago down in San Diego County, and if you see the photo of the guy standing there, I still don't know what he pulled out of his pocket, but whatever it was, he pulled it out and pointed at the officers from shooting stance.
Right. I saw a still photo of that. I didn't see the video, but I saw the still photo.
When you see the photo, you go, okay, well.
I just assumed that's what it was. I assumed he had a gun when I saw the photo.
Yeah, no, it wasn't a gun. In fact, they haven't said what it is, but it wasn't a gun.
Right.
But, after this shooting in El Cajon the other day, I was telling my boo.
Boo.
Yeah. I was telling Patricia, I said, I think what's going to come is department policy. You can't write a law for this, but I think progressive departments like LAPD has become and is evolving into are going to try to come up with policies that say, unless you see a gun, you can't use deadly force.
Okay.
I think that's what's coming, because there's got to be some way to get the officer to pause a second and without putting his life at risk. They have to find a way to do that. And, when I was interviewed for the Officer Involved series by KPCC, they used my example of, well, here was a guy facing a guy with a baseball bat, and he could have killed him, which I could have.
Right.
But I didn't. And the only reason I didn't wasn't because of, I thought something was, I was going to be disciplined for it. I did it because I thought about the law. I thought about my background, thought about my training, and I thought about
what you know and what you felt was right to do.
And I knew what I was looking for.
What your degree of threat was.
Correct.
Sure. That's an individual decision. And see, and that pisses me off when people want to challenge you on that.
But the thing is, in my incident, and I'm sure the incident in El Cajon and in others, is that it can go from shoot to no shoot in a fraction of a second.
And it can go from one to the other.
And, and I think more and more people they're going to put pressure on police departments, and administrators are going to say, you know what, you guys have to pause. You have to pause that extra second that you wouldn't normally pause, and then we're going to have to test this and see how it goes.
At what expense? At what cost?
Well,
and I don't mean financial cost. I mean the actual cost of life.
I don't know. I know the unions are going to argue that it's too dangerous and it shouldn't be done. An officer doesn't have time. You hesitate, on the street in a gunfight. You hesitate, you lose. I heard Scotty Reeds talking.
I heard him the other day on the radio. Sure.
After the El Cajon shooting, and he's a true gunfighter. He knows.
Right.
So I'm just saying that's what I think is coming in the new America as progressivism takes over and we kind of get more pro-criminal and less pro-cop.
Now, are we pro-criminal or are we just less pro-cop?
No, we're pro-criminal. In California, anyway. I don't know about the rest of the country, but at least
you mean because of Prop 47, et cetera?
Yeah. California loves some criminals. But that's besides the point. The point is, though, that I think officers are going to be forced to try, just like LAPD is doing this preservation of life awards now.
Right. Amazing.
Yay, you didn't shoot him. We're going to give you a medal and make it on par.
And that's every day. We should all get those. We should all have a chest full of them.
I mean, 1,000 times a day you point your gun at somebody. At least we did.
Quite often.
We worked, but I think I think society is going to demand from police administrators that there's got to be some way. And you can't legislate it, and it's all the officer's perspective in that moment at that time. And I think they're going to have to at least test a policy that says you have to wait. It's not going to be good enough. It's not going to be good enough to say, I thought he was reaching for a gun. I fired 2 rounds from my duty weapon.
Well, what will happen is that officers will get prosecuted for that enough times, and officers themselves will start saying, let's figure something out because if I'm wrong, there's going to be a big problem.
There's no way to prosecute these guys. The shooting in El Cajon.
Tell that to Marilyn Mosby in Prince George's County, Maryland.
Right? In El Cajon, that's going to be that's going to be a good shooting.
That's just how that is. I mean that. What are you supposed to do? Wait and see if the guy had a gun?
That's my point. Is that I'm saying
in a situation like that where it's a furtive movement, they do clearly, from what I saw, was trying to make them believe that he had a gun. And why would you do that? Now, we could argue all day and say
mental illness. That's why.
Well, he was mentally ill and apparently had a history of mental illness. But we could argue all day that what does it say about our society that if you want to be killed, go do this and you can goad the police into killing you, right? Because I've seen that happen before. We had that happen in L.A. up on La Brea around 3rd Street. Guy, suicide by cop is not an uncommon thing. But the first time I really came to this is a real problem, there was a guy who LAPD officer stopped on a traffic stop. They're talking to some motorist, and some guy walks up and just starts stabbing one of the officers with a steak knife. And he's screaming, shoot me, I have cancer, as he's stabbing him. Well, guess what? They shot him, and he didn't have cancer no more. Okay? But the fact of the matter is, he knew that was going to result. Unfortunately, the officer had to get stabbed a couple of times.
Wow.
You know, but he also.
I'm stunned at the insensitiveness of the way you put that.
Man, listen, dude, you can't run up on people, and, you know. But that guy wanted to avoid the painful death of cancer, but he got the painful death of gunfire instead.
Right.
And now that officer's got to live with that because that guy might have been an upstanding citizen until that day. Right. But he didn't want to deal with what cancer does to you. And he used the officer as an instrument to end his own life. That's unfair, man. It's not cool.
I'll tell you this. In the case in El Cajon especially, that this is not the first time that a family member has called and said, hey, my dad or my brother is out of control. He's mentally ill and we need help.
Oh, yeah, sure. We played a video about that last year, a guy in Texas.
That's
where the officer shot him and then the mother was screaming, but she's the one who called in the first place.
Right. And so I think in those circumstances, when somebody calls and says, hey, this guy's acting erratically. Apparently, they got multiple calls. But when the family calls and says, "Hey, my brother's out of control,
and I can't deal with him.
We need your help," as the responding officer, you have to be thinking, if this is a mental health issue, you got to communicate. You always communicate, right?
Sure.
You got to say to your partners when you get to the thing, "Hey, man, grab the beanbag, grab the whatever."
Right, sure.
We're going to, it might be, let's just see what we got.
Okay, but even if he is mentally ill, it doesn't mean he can't hurt you.
That's right.
It doesn't mean he doesn't really have a gun just because he's mentally ill.
That's right.
So that's kind of a tough one.
If somebody says you have a suspect with a possible mentally ill person,
right,
creating havoc in public, at least I think, officers, like my guy with a baseball bat, I didn't think he was a nut because we were sent to a gang fight with baseball bats. That's
sure.
What that was.
So you thought he was a gangster out there?
That's what it looked like, and that's what I thought it was. But even though I thought that, in the moment that I was standing there looking at him, I realized, well, this doesn't really look like a gang fight, but this guy looks kind of crazy.
Right. And he was. I know him. He was. Yeah.
Well, then, we find out after, that he was on
He was off his meds, right. Vietnam vet, et cetera. Right. I remember him.
But I'm just saying, I think the officers, in our day, the training said, if you fear for your life, you don't hesitate.
Right.
You cap them.
Right.
And I think in the new America and in the new police departments, I think the new guys coming up, they're going to have a whole different perspective.
Well, they have technology we didn't have too, right?
But
they have these other escalations that we don't have.
Technology can't help. Technology can't help with a mentally ill person.
That taser will, give him a dose of that Edison medicine.
I don't know.
As long as you connect with him, it's going to get a reaction. That's why taser is so great because it doesn't care if you're mentally ill or not.
In El Cajon and not North Carolina, but in Tulsa, both taser was deployed as well as a handgun.
Well, in Tulsa, the taser was deployed simultaneously with lethal force. There wasn't even time to see if the taser was working or not.
And in El Cajon, it was the same thing. The taser was deployed at
the same time. Okay.
So, I'm just saying that out on the street, technology is not the answer. What is the answer is a human being who can think under pressure. And I'm just saying that
I agree with that.
We were trained in the old school of if I sense a threat, I'm going to just stop the threat.
Right.
But I think in the new America, in the years to come, it's going to be demanded that cops not be that old school guy ready to go. It's going to be the new cop who says, I want to go, and if this guy doesn't do what I say, I'm going to try to get a better tactical advantage. I'm going to move.
Well, and that's what we're always supposed to have done. It just wasn't demanded that you do that.
Right.
Because like you said, don't hesitate.
Because
now,
once you get into a shooting stance, you tend to freeze. Your
feet are planted.
Right. You tend to just stay there. And, that's why in training they get you to fire and then move because your tendency is to just stay there.
You're right. Absolutely. Hey, 323-293-3375, if you'd like to add your voice to this conversation. We are going to we actually have we spent a lot of time on that. I didn't expect we were going to spend so much time on that, but we did. There is a short video that I want to show, and it's involved someone, and it seems like this year is always people that I know involved in these local stories of possible misconduct or allegations of misconduct. So I'm just going to roll this video, and we can talk about it briefly, and then we'll move on to our big story of the day. We got special in studio guest, and he's waiting patiently. So we're going to bring him in and talk about it. But first, we're going to play this video and talk about this officer who's got to get in trouble.
Holster your weapon, man. Holster your weapon. What can I do for you?
What do you mean holster my weapon?
Well, you pulling your weapon, so I'm telling you holster your weapon because you got nothing to fear. My hands are clearly in.
Okay, what are you doing?
What am I doing?
Yeah.
I'm sitting here in my vehicle working. Why?
Some kind of PI or something?
Does it appear that I'm doing something illegal?
I don't know.
Okay, so
step out for me.
We just went through this. Your other deputies end up in federal court. Please take your hands off of me.
122.
Get your watch commanders out here. Please get your watch commander out here. Get your watch commander out here. I'm asking you for your watch commander.
Got anybody else in here?
Nobody's in here. I'm asking. I'm not being uncooperative at all.
You are being uncooperative.
How am I being uncooperative?
Because you're not doing what I'm telling you to do.
First of all, deputy, you pulled up here, you took a look-see, I rolled my windows down for you.
Okay.
My hands are clearly visible.
Okay.
And now you're grabbing on me.
You just stay right there. Okay.
I haven't moved.
Okay.
So could you please let go of my wrist?
No, I'm not going to let go of your wrist.
Fine.
Just stay right
You need your watch commander.
Okay, we'll get to all of that.
I'm going to ask you again, could you please put your weapon up?
No.
Okay. I didn't hear you request a watch commander.
I don't need a request a watch commander.
I'm asking for your watch commander.
Okay, we'll get to all that when we're done with you.
I'm asking for your watch commander, Deputy
Plunkett.
I'm asking for your watch commander.
Okay, we'll get him over here.
Your hands are shaking. That makes me feel very nervous.
Well, you're making me nervous.
Why am I making you nervous?
You're not doing what I'm telling you to do.
I haven't did anything that you asked me to do. You haven't asked me to do anything.
I told you to step out.
You didn't tell me to step out.
I did.
You want me to step out?
No, not right now.
Okay.
I'm going to wait now.
That's fine. But your hand doesn't need to be on me. I'm sitting here. My hands are in plain sight.
Yeah, it's affirmative.
Ask for the watch commander, please.
We'll get to that in a minute.
Okay, I need your horsepower.
We'll get to all that.
Okay.
In good time.
Right.
No, don't be reaching.
Man, I'm taking it.
Don't be reaching.
You put your gun is shaking, and you pointing your gun at my head.
I'm pointing my gun at your head. Don't fucking reach. I told you not.
Man, I took my earpiece off.
Do not fucking reach.
Man, you need to put your weapon down. You need to put your weapon down, man.
I'm not gonna do nothing.
Hey, you need to get over here, senior. He's got his weapon at me and he's shaking.
What's going on right now?
It's nothing going on, deputy. He's got his weapon pointed at my head. I haven't done a thing. He came up here. He put his hands on me. I asked for a watch commander. He's pulling his weapon on me. For what? For what?
I told you what for.
For what?
You're not listening to my commands. Not that I know of.
For what? What is he pulling his weapon on me for? I asked for his watch commander. You the sergeant.
Keep your hands on the steering wheel. Put your hands on the steering wheel.
Hey, your guy
Put your hands on the steering wheel.
Your sergeant's here.
On the fucking
Would you tell him to drop?
What's going on?
Why is your officer cursing at me?
What's going on?
Why is your officer cursing at me?
Just do what he tell you.
Excuse me, sergeant.
I understand.
My hands were in plain sight when he came up. I put my hands out in plain sight. Okay? He asked me. He started being basically disrespectful, telling me, what am I doing here? Would you please tell him to put his weapon down?
What are you... You got the taser?
Bonnie's getting it. Bonnie's getting it.
What's going on? What are you doing here?
I'm code 5.
Where you work?
Where do I work? I work as a private investigator. And I just got through dealing with this in federal court with you guys. He pulled his weapon. All I did was remove my earpiece, and he pulled his weapon and pointed at my head. And he's still pointing his weapon at my head. I'm asking you to tell him to holster his weapon.
So what we'll do, we'll go ahead and we'll back it up. Back it up. Keep your hands up. We're going to have you come out so we can figure out what's going on.
That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
Back it up. Back it up. Okay, come on out.
I got it.
So what?
Search it.
Oh, no problem. No problem. I'm gonna turn around. No problem. No problem.
Substance duty 2 comes to you down the handle on tech 44.
All right. And so that was the now viral video of private investigator Ken Sheppard and his encounter with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. And man, as luck would have it, guess who we have sitting here in the studio right next to me? The actual guy, Mr. Ken Sheppard, the private investigator. And we are joined by the one and only Jasmyne Cannick, who is a nationally known political and social commentator and journalist. She's a frequent on-air contributor, and she was selected as one of Essence Magazine's 25 Women Shaping the World and one of the most influential African Americans in Los Angeles under 40.
Wow.
Yes, wow.
Thank you.
This is really cool. It's really cool to have you here.
It's cool to be here.
You know, this thing has really got legs, as they say, right? So it's got, I don't know how many views it has on all the different sites that it's on, but it's got to be like
almost, I know it's
north of 10 million, right?
Yeah, well, on Facebook it's over 4 million. On YouTube I haven't looked, but it was in the tens of thousands.
No, somebody had like 9 million views or something I saw. So if you add that to all of that, that's up there. And you posted it when?
A week ago today, actually.
Incredible.
Around 1 o'clock a week ago. Still not big enough, though, for any of the mainstream news.
They can't ignore it, though, if it keeps rolling.
Well, Mr. Sheppard's not dead, and activists and newscasters tend to, congregate around deaths.
If it bleeds, it leads,
That's
right?
Yeah.
That's what they say.
So, unfortunately.
So, Mr. Sheppard.
Yes.
When this happened to you, when this interaction happened, when did you kind of think maybe this is something that I should catch on video, or were you just always rolling because you were already on a Code 5, on a stakeout and a surveillance investigator speak?
I'm always rolling anytime I see a black and white unit come up, even if it's not.
Move up a little bit.
Speaking to your mic.
There you go.
I'm always rolling anytime there's a black and white unit in my area. Yesterday I was on a Code 5 and something happened at the plaza directly across from me. I thought they were coming from me. So
because they were all responding.
Yeah, and they were responding. They drew their weapons, and then I saw a sergeant get out of his vehicle. I didn't know which direction he was going. So basically all the equipment checks are done, daily.
Sure.
Just like a officer would do. And when I check the equipment, everything is good to go. And when I see an officer, and especially if he's approaching me, I'm gonna have the video rolling, because that's the only thing you have to protect yourself when you're out there on a Code 5.
Well, and especially if people don't even know that it's rolling, and you get to get people in their more natural state, I guess I'm going to say.
Correct.
And but as we know, as a police officer, you're always supposed to conduct yourself as if the world is watching, because quite often it is, right?
Nowadays.
Yeah, for sure. But even back in the day, after Don Jackson in Long Beach, we knew then that you're always on camera, or behave as if you're always on camera. Clearly, some of us didn't subscribe to that philosophy, but many of us did. Those of us who went on to maintain our freedom and careers understood that this is something that you can't play with. So when I saw this video, I didn't even know what to expect. I just started getting tagged in it, and people are tagging me, and I'm sure you probably got some tags too.
I saw it one time, but I think when you asked me, I said no, but I had seen it.
Right, because I sent you the link. You said, "Oh yeah, that situation." So because we're kind of in the position beside the show, even before we started doing the show, we're both kind of outspoken. And I'm minimizing that. We're pretty outspoken, okay? Even when we were on the job, there were probably some of our coworkers who weren't too fond of us because we were pretty outspoken.
Yeah.
And especially some administrators that weren't too fond of us because we were pretty damn outspoken. So people will tag us in these kind of things to get our input. And I got tagged in this several times. Mm-hmm. I got tagged in this on my own Facebook. I got tagged in this in the Rollout chat room. Shout out to Chuck Farmer, et cetera, the people who put that up and tagged me in it. And so what happens is I have to watch it now, right? And as I'm watching it, I go, okay, well, wow, man, I would have done that differently. That's all I'm thinking. Now, keep in mind, 25-year career. I was a supervisor for the vast majority of my career. For more than half of my career, I was a supervisor at the 2 agencies I worked at. So I'm maybe looking at this a little different. But all I could think of is, I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have done that. Wow, I bet he wishes he hadn't done that. So when you guys did your Q&A, because after you posted this, you actually did a live Q&A, right? Like a Facebook Live thing?
Let me back up just a little bit before we even get to that point.
Okay.
So that, because this is really, I guess, this is our second interview that we've ever done together regarding this. This is probably going to be the most in-depth one. So
okay.
Just for the record, I want to have this on the record. So when Mr. Sheppard came to me, I initially sought to find a bigger outlet to do his story.
Okay.
I'm really good about policing myself in terms of possible conflicts of interest and thinking, okay, yeah, I could write about it, I could do it, but I'm not NBC, I'm not ABC, I'm not
Sure.
CNN. I mean, I thought that his story was big enough for one of those networks to do. And because for a living, I work with the media
Right.
and work in the media, I started calling folks and sending it to people.
Sure.
And there was a lot of interest. But their bosses, the executive producers, the editors, were coming back and saying, well, he didn't die. Well, he lost his lawsuit, so there's no story there. And it was so disheartening. And these are only things that you would know if you were in my shoes, or if you work with the media, the sort of behind the scenes things that happen before a story
Right.
even gets there. And so that is what. I'm no stranger to breaking stories. I'm no stranger to writing about controversial issues. But I just thought maybe CNN might want to do this. As a matter of fact, I was on the air at CNN, and when I left out the stage, I said to one of the executive producers, "Hey, let's have a conversation. I want to
Right,
show
got
you
something
this
for
video."
you. Sure.
It never materialized, and so then I decided, well, I'm going to go ahead and do a story. But in the interest of my own, what I would consider perhaps a conflict of interest, because I work with cities who contract the sheriff's
Sure.
department, and I work, for a police union, and I try to be really respectful of that. I said, you know what? I'm just going to take the complaint. I'm going to summarize what's in the complaint and post the video and let people come to their own conclusions. I didn't opinionate on it. I which for some people who read my writings, they know I have an opinion about a lot of things, and I'm no stranger to saying it. But I didn't do that with this on purpose.
Right.
And I went to bed Thursday, and I think when I went to bed, it was like at 13,000 views. I woke up the next morning, and it was like 17,000. And throughout the day, it actually, I think on Thursday, it did hit 1 million. And then it just kept going and going and going from there.
Well, it kept getting spread. I'm telling you, I got hit a couple times on it.
And then I told Mr. Sheppard, I said, you know what? This is a story. And for me, I think what the tragic part of it is that, one, the media misses the mark a lot of times. This is a story that, as we go into that Q&A part we're going to talk about, that has people on both sides of this issue around police misconduct, police killings, police brutality, talking,
Sure.
and in some ways talking to each other. And I loved that on my Facebook page, where there were people like you who are in supervisor positions who were trying to explain to civilians.
This is why this goes on.
Right. Even I sent this video to a couple of folks in different departments here in Los Angeles, and most of them came back with, Even people within the sheriff's department were like,
sure. Well, there was clearly some things that should not have gone on here. I mean, clearly, just even procedurally, tactically, in terms of proper weapon handling. I know you saw that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I just looked over at you because I know you saw that. But this kind of a thing, I mean, man, starting from the beginning. So let me ask you this. And a lot of people have said to me that the deputy probably got his dander up, for lack of a better term, when you told him to holster his weapon. Because for a police officer, you don't tell us what to do, especially something like that, right? So now we look at that like, what? Say what? Holster my what?
Well, it was
right,
it was
and then that's going to be negative after that.
Clearly contempt of cop. That's what happened.
Oh yeah, sure.
It was
I actually heard that from a couple of attorneys and people, that exact phrase, who said that's what it was, contempt.
That's what it was. But I can tell you why, though. And, I'll wait till we get into the Q&A, but I understand why it went the way that it did. And, I was also won a Golden Mic at, public radio here for stories that I did. So I understand why it's not a story. I also understand that part, too. So, but we'll continue with the Q&A.
Okay. So with that right there, you got a situation where that deputy feels like now he's going to have, and I'm not speaking for the dude. I don't know the dude. We have a mutual friend who speaks highly of him, but I don't know him, so I'm not defending him.
Yes, our mutual friend does speak very highly.
He does speak highly of him, and he's known him since high school.
And because that is a mutual friend, and we think highly of the mutual friend,
yes,
we listen to the mutual friend.
Exactly. And so I say, and that mutual friend who's been a guest on this show a couple of times before, in fact. So I say that just from the police perspective, that when someone's trying to wrest control of the situation, you are taught and you are expected to regain control of the situation, because we drive the incident. The civilian,
that's right.
The motorist doesn't drive the incident. The civilian does not drive that contact. We do, because we're held responsible for the outcome. Okay? So when he hears you tell him, holster your weapon, first of all, he's not going to. I know you didn't expect him to really do it, right?
Yes, I did, because he wasn't following his policies and procedures. And he never should have drawn his weapon just by stopping by my vehicle. What was the purpose of stop? What was the purpose of drawing your weapon and you're not called to that scene?
Okay, now let me ask you this question, though. Mm-hmm. How do you know, or how did you know? We know now how you know. You know now for sure what transpired and what led him to be there. But at that time, what way did you have of knowing why the deputy was contacting you in the first place?
The deputy wasn't contacting me in the proper procedure, because the deputy, he almost hit my vehicle when he was coming up. And when the deputy saw me, I nodded my head like, what's up, what's going on?
Sure.
So then the deputy stops next to my driver's door, and he looks over, and I look at him. Mm-hmm. So then the deputy pulls to my quarter panel, right, as opposed to going up behind the vehicle, turning around, making a U-turn.
And so this is consistent with him just observing you and not being called, is what you're saying.
And so
in that black SUV that's out there?
Yeah.
That's a vehicle?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and you can see that it's pretty much immaculate, right?
Well, it's darked out.
Yeah. But the front windshield is not darked out. And it was early in the morning. So he clearly saw me, because once he gets to the quarter panel, I'm watching him from the driver's side mirror.
Right.
So, as I said, gadgets are going. So when he gets out, I make sure that both my hands are in plain sight.
Sure.
He sees my hands. That's one of the things that law enforcement individuals ask, that you have both your hands.
Sure, because the hands are what's going to kill you. But I can't see. Windows are blacked out purposely.
Window was down.
All the windows?
By that point, he had rolled his windows down.
All the windows down.
No, I rolled the driver's windows down, because that's the only side he was approaching on. Anytime, if there's a traffic stop, because that wasn't a traffic stop.
It was not a traffic. Let's make that clear also, because a lot of people are saying that it was a traffic stop. It was not a traffic stop. You were already stopped.
Right.
Previously for a long time, and then the deputy came up to you.
Exactly, and they tried to portray to the public, and they kept saying in court it was a traffic stop. It wasn't a traffic stop.
You already stopped. Yeah.
I had been there for over 3 hours.
Well, technically, once he gets out of the car and turns his lights on and gets on the radio and calls your vehicle in, that is a traffic stop.
Well, he's already parked, though.
He didn't call my vehicle in. He didn't put the lights on, and that's what I was stating. If he did the procedure correctly, then it never would have happened. He didn't do that.
He just left his car in the middle of the street?
He left his car in the middle of the street.
You're on a residential street?
Residential street.
Yeah.
A cul-de-sac, right?
A cul-de-sac. Both. It's a wide street coming off of Montrose, off Verdugo Road. When you exit the 2, go to Verdugo, then you come around to Montrose, and then you go to Del Mar, and the street splits off like this. Del Mar one.
But now, before we go any further, that person knows now that case is over. You're working on, right? Because I want you to give up too much game, and they're listening and saying, "Well, I better not go to the gym tomorrow if he's watching me."
The case is not over.
Case is okay. Well, then let's not get too detailed then. So let me ask you this then. So then the deputy make contact with you. Actually, he's coming to make contact with you, and you make contact first by saying holster your weapon.
I'm telling him holster his weapon because.
Okay.
Well, the deputy was the first one who spoke in the video.
I don't think so, was it?
No,
I heard holster your weapon first from him.
Yes, and then the deputy says, "What do you mean, holster my weapon?"
Right.
And I asked.
So he made contact with the deputy before the deputy could make contact with him. But the deputy was coming to make contact with him. That's pretty clear.
But I remember when I saw the video that you sent me. The first thing that struck, there was a few things that struck me, but one is I'm also a licensed private investigator. So the first thing is, whenever we do surveillance, when we get to a location we're going to surveil, we call the police, we call a station, we say, hey, we're on surveillance. Here's what we're doing. Here's the vehicles we're in.
Right.
Here's the license number.
And I'm glad you asked that, because I'm smiling because that was a preloaded question. I had that in my back pocket. So there's a reason you didn't do all that.
There's that, and then I'm not clear on why the deputy stopped. I know you were parked in your vehicle.
He was in Montrose, and he's black.
But that's not the reason.
City has less.
That's not, the deputy didn't say that. What's the deputy's reason?
Deputy didn't say that.
But let me go back to what you just said. Question to you: is calling in a code 5 legal? Is that the law?
It's not in the penal code, no.
State that again for the public.
It's not in the penal code.
It's not in the penal code.
You're not legally required to do that. It's just good practice.
Exactly. No, it's not. Because
in this case,
no, I can tell you, dealing with the sheriff, we've called in code 5s when I have multiple, and then sometimes you know this, you use 2 or 3 men, right? We call code 5 in, and they roll up on us within 10 minutes. We've called code 5s in, and
in spite of the code 5 or because of the code 5?
In spite of the code 5. Okay. I've been in Lancaster, Palmdale, and we've been doing cases since we hid behind tumbleweeds, okay? A guy comes up, only one person that came out of their residence. So the guy looks at me. Guy takes off, guy comes back, guy looks over again. I don't care, because he's not the target. He's not the subject. Next thing I get is a black and white next to me telling me, you have to call in a code 5. When you out here, you have to call in a code 5. I said, man, that's not the law. He said it is. He said it is.
It's not even the law. The other law enforcement agencies do that. It's just considered a courtesy.
I'm telling the deputy, you're wrong. So when you're telling the deputy or PD that they're wrong, they get upset.
Or to holster their weapon.
But him getting upset, he brought that on himself, because he shouldn't have drawn his weapon when he got out of his vehicle. He had procedures that he could have followed, and nothing would have ever happened.
But let me ask you this question, and this is why we always say you don't know what the officer has in their, we don't know what information the officer's working with. Somebody could have called in and said they saw you doing whatever. Someone could have called, someone who matched your description, because we get that all the time, match your description or vehicle description, could have been pulling burglaries in the neighborhood or whatever. So you don't know when that officer comes to contact you, you don't know what the information that officer's working with. Now we know now in hindsight, but at that time, I understand you're a very good PI, but you ain't that good. You can't see the future. You didn't know what was coming, so how did you know why that deputy was contacting you?
The deputy was contacting me on his own, because I never, ever get out of my vehicle when I'm on code 5.
Right.
The only time I'm going to get out of my vehicle if I'm on a code 5 is if we following somebody, we're mobile, and they go to like a shopping center or something like that, then I'm going to get out. But the difference is with us as PIs, as opposed to law enforcement, they have a team of 10 or more. They have a co-agent and a case agent and a co-case agent.
Right, that's for like a big case, sure.
Exactly. And they can send additional people in.
Right, but you can't do that with just a couple of guys.
You can't do that, right? So you have to maintain your cover. The windows are tinted because to maintain the cover, and the vehicle carries over $50,000 plus worth of equipment in it at all times. So how is it that the deputy says he doesn't see me, then he later states he can see both front seats, but he didn't see me, and I'm sitting in the front seat, and there's no place else for anybody to sit in there. No place.
Because all the back is loaded down with gear.
Gear in the rear seats, as well as in the cargo area. Everything has gear in it.
Well, let me ask you this question. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of people have said what the news executive told you, Jasmine, that, well, he didn't win his case, so, we're not interested in the outcome of it, right? And a lot of people say that. A lot of people were saying, well, there must be something more to this because he didn't prevail in court. And I think that's a conversation I had with both of you separately, was that So what happened for the outcome to go against you? Because this video and the other companion video seem to be pretty compelling to me.
If you get to see them.
Exactly.
See, what people don't realize, let me tell you something. You know, that's why I try to stay out the comment section on social media, because it's a deep, dark place.
It is.
When you get into all those comments. People don't realize that when you file a lawsuit, especially in the state of California, it could be anywhere from 1 to 2 to 3 years before you ever see the inside of a courtroom, if you see the inside of one, right? Because some cases settle, some cases are dismissed. In Mr. Sheppard's case, this happened in 2014, but it didn't go to court until September 13th, 2016.
Just recently.
That was a week and a half ago,
Yeah,
a week,
sure.
2 weeks ago. So that's one of the reasons why this video is just coming out. But then the other part is, oftentimes, kind of like when you are charged with a crime, right, especially for all my Law and Order folks and my CSI folks and all those folks like to watch those police procedural shows, they will throw the kitchen sink at you when you get charged or when you get arrested. But then by the time you get to court, a lot of those charges will fall off, right? It's very similar with Mr. Sheppard's case. He sued the county for a number of things, but the judge, Judge Otero, removed some of the causes of action. Okay, when he did that, he eliminated the need for certain evidence to be shown. For example, if I'm suing you for conspiracy, and what I'm speaking of is about the part in one of the videos where they're trying to come up with creative ways to cite him and give him tickets, and the judge says, well, that cause of action I'm throwing out, well, guess what? They don't need to see that video in court, because that's no longer a part of the court case. And so finally, when you whittle it all the way down and you have a judge that's very conservative like Judge Otero, you end up with just a little bit of what you started out with, and a lot of the evidence was suppressed because it no longer pertained in the judge's mind to the case, and the jury didn't need to see that. So
they didn't see this video that we saw, is what we're saying.
They saw some of it, right? Okay. They didn't see all of it.
The parts, the illegal search, illegal pat down, they tried to put a different spin on it in court. They said it was okay for Rodriguez to pat me down when there were male officers there. The own lieutenant got on the stand, and we had part of the departmental policy, that particular page, right? And it says, under exigent circumstances, then a woman can pat me.
Right, but there's no exigency there if there's other deputies, male deputies around.
Exactly.
Sure.
But then they state that Plunkett couldn't pat me down. Why? I don't know. They state that Hollis couldn't pat me down because that's beneath him.
The sergeant?
Yes.
Well, it may take him away from his supervisory duties. It's not that it's beneath him, as he's still a cop and he's still supposed to do cop stuff.
Right.
But it may be, it takes him away from watching what's going on with everybody else if he's patting you down, because he's got to focus on you.
While all this is going on, other male deputies are there.
Right. Well, we see on the video the Deputy Plunkett was clearly there.
Right.
But the other two were females that I saw now.
Right.
And I heard the two females talking later on too.
Right. That they later on basically caught themselves by illegally removing an item from my vehicle.
They recorded themselves.
Right. Let's talk about that. A lot of people say, well, what is that? Now, what is that thing? So there's another video that if we have time, we'll show it. But it actually catches audio. We don't get too much video because of the nature of the object. But how do they do that? How are we privy to this conversation that they thought was not going to be exposed?
Okay, because when I got out of the vehicle, I strategically placed the item to keep recording, right? It was still rolling. And that's how you see in a part of the video that you guys don't see, you see the people illegally going into my vehicle. Those people went into my vehicle. You can hear them talking. One deputy says, man, he looks into the vehicle. He's like, he's got it going on, right? Another deputy, plainclothesman, he comes up. He's like, man, this cat's got radios and everything.
Right.
Another one goes up, man, he's got cameras and, all this stuff.
Sure, look at all the stuff you got back. You said $50,000 worth of equipment.
Right. And so they're going like, okay. They don't know they're being recorded.
Right.
Okay. Then Bonnie Hansen comes and removes the item
yes.
from the vehicle, and then she's caught conspiring.
Now, why would she remove anything from the vehicle?
Because they had, if you watch the video closely, you will see Plunkett unlock the doors. Plunkett puts his hand on the driver's side.
And Plunkett is the deputy who contacted you in the first place.
Exactly. So Plunkett unlocks the doors. They are saying that they were trying to find the registration. All they had to do was run the VIN number. You know that. You know that. VIN number's right there. They unlocked the doors. Somebody removed the temporary registration from the windshield because you will see them throwing it around in the vehicle.
Okay.
All right. Deputy Octool had ran me, and later in the deposition, he said he never ran me.
Well, I mean, that's easy enough to prove. I mean, you know, there's records of every time somebody gets run.
No, but he had a.
Now, were these all causes of action in terms of the female deputy part?
Yes.
That was a count you listed in your lawsuit?
Yes.
Now, and that was and so you listed the female deputy patting you down as a count because of. You explain that to people why that was an issue for you.
That was an issue for me because in the Department of Policies and Procedure, it tells you, I think it's in the second or third paragraph, it's telling you that the female is not to pat a male down if there are other males there, and there were clearly other males there because you see them on the video. They said it was exigent circumstances that she could pat me down, but I'm saying, where is the rush?
No, but I'm saying for you, what led you to want to press that issue? Just because you knew it was out of pocket, or to make you feel uncomfortable, or you know what I mean?
I was uncomfortable with it, and then she removed my wallet and she walked away with it. She actually removed my credit card holder and she walked away with it. And they know they're not supposed to do that. So you can see her in the video. She has my credit card holder and she's walking away with it. She's looking for the license. I tell her as she's walking away, that's not my wallet. Uh-huh. She comes back. I said, wallet's in my right rear pocket. She reaches into the right rear pocket. She looks at it.
You handcuffed at this point?
Yes, I'm handcuffed. Then they put me.
Are you out of the vehicle? Or are you in the police vehicle already?
When it first starts, of course, I'm outside the police vehicle. I'm actually outside of Plunkett's vehicle.
Okay.
And then after Rodriguez pats me down, they tell me, have a seat. So I'm cuffed. I have a seat. Hanson gets in the front seat, and Hanson tells me, what are you doing here? Because you don't belong here. And I said, what are you talking about? Right. I don't belong here. I belong wherever I choose to go. Wherever I could afford to be, I told her that's where I choose to be.
I would also add that you have to also remember in a lot of these cases, it's not the plaintiff who is sitting around coming up with what the causes of actions are going to be. It's an attorney. So the attorney looks at the video and says, you know, we're going to go for this, and this. Okay,
so now let me ask you then. How is that different than the deputy sitting in the car looking at the vehicle code and seeing the violations on your vehicle and saying, we're going to sign in for this, and this?
Because it's selective prosecution, because if I got still photos I can show you that there's vehicles at their station that are tinted out and they're personal vehicles.
Sure.
And even if they're not personal vehicles, they're not exempt.
Right, but that doesn't mean you didn't do it too, though. I mean, that doesn't mean you get a pass just because somebody else is doing it, right?
No, that means selective prosecution. You shouldn't cite somebody for what you're doing.
And that's I think an ethical thing more than a legal standard. Because as a supervisor, I would walk the parking lot and see if my officers had vehicles that had the windows that were tinted. And remember when that was a big thing for people to have the tail lights all blacked out and everything?
Yeah.
One of my young officers was, he's one of these young Thundercats, and he had his rear tail lights all blacked out and everything. So I pull him to the side. I go, let me tell you something. You need to get that fixed, and until you do get it fixed, I'm not expecting you to see any citations come across my desk that you hung on somebody for this same violation. But that's a moral thing. That's an ethical thing. It doesn't mean that just because he's got a car back at the station with that same violation that he can't hang paper on you for it, because he certainly can.
And he can be cited as well.
Sure.
But I think go ahead.
And I've told not just their department. I've told other sergeants and things like that, if they tried give somebody a type of ticket, I tell them about selective prosecution, and I tell them you can't have your parking enforcement or your officers step over something that they're doing and then walk right out the station and then start citing people for it. It's not.
Well, everybody's got a leeway. Everybody's got discretion, and as long as it's not based on a pattern of discriminating toward a certain group or away from a certain group.
Then why?
Because here's the thing: you see stuff all the time that you're going to let go. minor things, right? I don't pull over everybody that I see that didn't signal when they made a right turn.
Right.
But I might decide that if you do it, I'm going to pull you over. If you do it in front of me, maybe that day I feel like doing it.
Or you got some sort of ticket quota you need to meet.
No, there's no quota. They let us write as many as we want. There's no quota.
So what happened?
So they say.
So
What happened to the
if
burgundy?
I write enough, I get a toaster.
What happened to the burgundy van that's tinted out that's right there by Hanson's vehicle? Why didn't they?
But they're not talking to him. They're talking to you right now. And right now,
They weren't talking to
you're
me.
on the hot seat,
They weren't
and so
talking
now
to me.
you're
They
the
were
one that's going to get the ticket.
They weren't talking to me. They were conspiring against me.
Okay, well, I'm
And that's
saying
what-
you're
and that's
the
what-
you're the
and
subject
that's
at
what
hand,
the-
right?
You're never going to change Mr. Sheppard's feelings and position.
No.
on that. But what I will
I'm just
say,
here to give him the explanation that they didn't give him.
Okay, but look, the other part of that part of the video that I think is really important is that I hear what you're saying about the tinted windows and everything, but just the manner in which they're having the conversation and the part where they're like, I'm not signing this ticket, you sign this ticket, it really leads you to think
Right, it
like,
sounds conspiratorial. No doubt.
so you know you are writing up all these charges, but you don't want to sign the ticket? You're going to make sure someone else signs their name to that
Well,
ticket?
that's because, hey, you catch it, you clean it.
That's right. I would say the same thing. I would say after we decided, hey, if I'm the senior guy and somebody says, hey, man, here's what I want to write it for. Then, yeah, you can do that. I wouldn't do that. Yeah, add this one in. And then, but if he says, will you sign the ticket? I say, no, I'm not going to sign that ticket. This is your caper. I'm here for
Right.
your safety.
Because that means I got to go to court later if he wants to fight it. No, I'm not doing that. I'm not here for that.
They didn't ask the senior. They didn't ask Plunkett because Plunkett was back there with Hollis. They were over in Hanson's vehicle.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that they have to ask the senior. He's used that as an example because we know there's three kinds of powers, right? There's a legitimate power that a supervisor has by virtue of their stripes.
Correct.
There's the referent power people have with their respect for that officer and that officer's abilities. But there's also expert power. So if one of those deputies just came over from traffic division, that's the deputy I'm going to ask about the traffic. About what can I get you for?
But those
for lack of a better term, what can I get you for because you pissed me off?
But
Right.
those deputies didn't even know what the penal codes were because you can hear them on the
the
video.
You don't have to know. You just have to know where to find it in the book.
They didn't
Well, it
know
doesn't
'cause they're
sound very.
It doesn't sound very
good.
nice. It doesn't
Neither
sound
did
very
the please just let me tase him part. That didn't
Okay,
sound
now let's
very
talk
nice
about that
either.
because that was the big thing that everybody keyed on.
Right.
If you look at that second video at about a minute and 30 seconds into it, one of the female deputies goes, please just let me tase him. Because apparently, contempt of cop, I don't know, I guess you were still having some interaction with the deputies at that point?
No, I wasn't having any interaction with the deputy. I was talking to Hollis, and I had told Hollis clearly, tell them to stay out of my vehicle. They can't search my vehicle unless they get
Right.
a telephonic search warrant. And they were going in my vehicle, and I'm standing there looking at them. And even because, of course, I didn't hear the part about the ticket.
Well, now you know
until I
that
got the
they
camera.
can. It's just that anything they find is not admissible, absent that if they're going to prosecute you for it.
They had no search warrant.
Yeah, but I want to just say,
Okay.
if from the law enforcement perspective, if I have to have contact with the guy sitting in the vehicle and it turns out he's a licensed private investigator, and he's kind of argumentative with me, and he's got a bunch of gear in the car, and now I'm angry and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to shoot the guy, but I don't like the way he came off at me. So I'm going to get you out of the car, and I'm going to send you back with my partner, and you're going to have a discussion. If I see all this stuff in the car, I'm going to start thinking, I wonder what else this guy has. Wonder if he has a rifle in here. Wonder if there's a shotgun wonder if there's a gun under the seat. Or I wonder. I'm going to look, and I'm going to be well within my rights to do that.
Well, now here's the question, though. Would you be, because what is he being investigated for? Is there anything that would lead to a search of his vehicle now that he's been pulled out of the vehicle? Was there any allegation made that he'd done anything? You got to have a reason to do that. But it doesn't become an issue whether they have a warrant or not unless you're going to prosecute you for something.
I think you can articulate in a police report that, here I have a guy who's sitting in the vehicle who tells me that he's on a surveillance, and I don't know who he's surveilling or why, but he's got a vehicle full of gear, cameras, radios. He's not in law enforcement, and
But
he's
you got
not
a PI license on you, right?
So I want to know who he is. I want to know
Well, he's got all his
Definitely not
ID.
going to pull your gun out on him and start cursing at him.
But cursing is something. Let's circle back to that because cursing is okay sometimes. But we have a caller. Let's get to this caller. Caller, what's your name and where you calling from?
Marshall McLean calling from L.A.
Wow, isn't that
mutual
something?
friend.
Speak of that guy and he shall appear. Marshall McLean. Yes, sir. How are you? Glad you called in.
I had to call in because some of the stuff that's going on is just a little bit too twisted for me.
Well, speak on it.
Well,
I wish you were here. We could pull up a mic for you and a chair.
I wish I was there too, because I'd be throwing some rocks back about this idea of conspiracy.
Okay, well, lay it out.
Well, I mean, first off, I've been on many of stops, whether it be a traffic stop, pet stop, or whatnot, and talking to a senior officer or more experienced officer about what we can get this person for. And just because I use that vernacular, what can we get this person for, doesn't mean that it's a conspiracy. Just because there's more than one cop looking for the best site to use doesn't make it a conspiracy. The problem I have with this entire stop and the entire videos is the fact that when did we get to a point where we want to debate something on the street rather than, you know what, if this guy's a jerk, you know what, I'll go ahead and file my complaint, or if I'm going to go ahead and take him to court, I'm going to go take him to court. But to put it to a point where I'm putting my life at risk when a guy's pointing a gun at me and I'm still going to debate and argue with him?
Are we talking about from the PI's perspective? Listen, we always say that, comply now, complain later.
Exactly.
Right? That's the name of the game, is comply now, complain later, because you got to figure it's not set up for you to win that argument with that deputy. Like you told me that I will never change Mr. Sheppard's mind. You were never going to talk that deputy to putting that gun back in his holster.
I think that was clear because Sergeant Hollis could barely get him to put the gun back in his
first off, let's back up there. Because he did holster his weapon at one point.
At a certain point,
video,
yeah.
And then something happened that made him pull his gun back out.
Well, now let's talk about that, because we have the actual guy sitting here. So, Mr. Sheppard, at what point, so like on the video, we can hear you telling the officer or the deputy, holster your weapon. We can't really see what you're doing, though. At this point, where are your hands, and what are you doing as you're talking to the deputy?
My left hand is on the open driver's door window, and my right hand is at the 12 o'clock on the steering wheel.
Yeah, when he took the earpiece out, when he made that movement to take the earpiece out, that's when the deputy came back out.
Okay, so yeah, and I because you can only see your left hand come up to remove the earpiece.
Right.
We have to just kind of wonder what's going on with your right hand.
The right hand is filming him.
Okay, so you had the camera in your right hand, or you had?
Right hand was filming him, yes.
Okay.
But it wasn't a camera where I think the deputy realized.
That it was a camera.
Yeah, I don't.
Well, PI's got all kind of little neat spy gadgets that they can use to record people. You know.
We just had a guy who got shot because he had an e-cigarette in his hand.
Yeah.
That's El Cajon. That's what he had in his hand.
That's what he had.
It is, but he took a shooting stance.
Correct.
And those officers are being ridiculed. First, now the family is saying that he didn't have a mental health problem. He was just having a bad day.
Yeah, well, no, that's pretty clear. It's coming out now. We actually covered that earlier in the first part of the show, because that's a thing. And we had some Twitter comments about that earlier too.
So
tell me this. In your
wait.
In either one of your careers.
Hold on.
Let me get it.
When have you ever holstered your weapon when at the time suspect told you to do so?
Oh, never. If I had two guns, I'd pull that one out at that point.
I never had anybody tell me to put my gun away.
I don't think I have either, but if I did, I probably would pull my other gun out too. But go ahead, Mr. Sheppard.
He just made a statement about somebody having a bad day. So you think anytime your officers want to make an excuse, that's good, right? Because that sounds like the statement that Bonnie Hansen made. Bonnie Hansen asked, "Why did you want to taser him?" Why did Bonnie Hansen tell me I don't belong there? Why?
No, I think he was saying that the family was saying that the guy in El Cajon just had a bad day.
Right.
That wasn't explanation for officers.
Well, why would your officer have a bad day? She should have stayed at home if she was having such a bad day. She never should have came to work.
Well, who told you they had a bad day, though?
Bonnie Hansen.
Okay, well,
the one who's
that's
saying,
a bad
"Please
answer.
let me taser him." That's her answer. That's her answer in the depot.
But did she just said that off the cuff for no reason at all?
She was in a deposition. She knew what the deposition represented, right?
No, at the time, the original statement. The original statement, though.
For no reason at all?
That's why I asked you what was going on at that time. Remember I asked you that?
That's what he was telling you. He was watching his car being illegally searched, and he was telling Sergeant Hollis for them not to be searching. Right. She overheard him saying that and said, "Please just let me tase him."
Right, please let me tase him, right. Okay, so now that clearly is inappropriate. But her talking about it and what she was going to, I'm sure she said that she was saying it in jest, right?
No, she did.
So you think she really? Well, I don't. It doesn't matter if she really wanted to tase you or not. She didn't do it. So I think, because let me tell you something. If you could get in trouble for the stuff that gets said in a police car, whoo, are you kidding me? You should hear some of the stuff that gets said when we think we're in private. So for her, I'm not even going to call her on that one, because I've said way worse shit than that. I'm going to tell you. I just have. So, and Marshall and I have been partners before, and you and I have been in a police car together before. So, you know.
She didn't tase him, though, right?
That's what I'm saying. She didn't do it.
Now, you guys sound as worse as the news media. I think Mr. Sheppard's situation.
Oh, it was inappropriate. I'm not saying it wasn't
right.
inappropriate.
No, I get that. I think Mr. Sheppard's situation, unlike El Cajon and Tulsa and Charlotte and all the other cities where police killings of unarmed people have taken place, is that, you know, the average person is likely to have an encounter with a law enforcement officer and walk away. The average person doesn't get shot by the police.
Right. Those are outliers.
When they have an interaction. And I think that's one of the reasons why so many people watched that video and really got into the discussion around it.
So that could be them.
That could be them. That is, every day, I understand it was not a traffic stop in terms of you driving the vehicle, but people driving, getting pulled over or whatnot. And so when we go back to this discussion around why isn't Mr. Sheppard's story taking off like what happened in Tulsa and what happened in Charlotte and now what's happened in El Cajon, I think we do ourselves as a society a disservice by not taking up these discussions like around these sorts of situations.
Where somebody walked away whole.
Right. We want to just talk about the people who died, and I'm not taking anything away from people who have been killed, but that is, despite what the media tries to tell you, that is not the norm. Those are anomalies.
Right. Sure they are.
It seems like the norm because every single day almost.
Well, you just named 3 shootings that have taken place in the last week. Essentially, right?
Yeah.
But again, how many police encounters do we have today? How many tens of thousands of encounters that police have with American public today
right.
that didn't result in anybody being killed?
Right.
So those are indeed outliers. But your situation, again, since you're sitting here living and breathing and intact, it doesn't grab the attention of the news media, but it will capture the imagination of
I have
other people, right?
I have a question. Now,
Send it.
Now, I know, Jasmine, you've spoken to a lot of other cops about this.
I have.
And has a question come up at all, Mr. Sheppard, that the way you handled it could have been handled differently as well? Because you're an educated man. You come more in contact with law enforcement than most individuals on a normal day. You clearly seem to be able to recite what the policies said, but yet this was still your response on a quote-unquote routine stop.
Wasn't a routine stop or wasn't stopped. I was
routine contact. Quote-unquote routine contact.
I said quote-unquote stop.
Right.
And
right.
You know what I'm saying. I'm not trying to say that you were pulled over any of that.
I wasn't.
Because it definitely wasn't routine, because you don't have police officers coming in contact with a guy with $50,000 worth of equipment in their car. I can tell you probably would have got treated similarly if you would have been parked near the airport with everything going on right now.
That's right.
FBI would have probably been questioning you as well.
Well, I think let's couch the question this way. Mr. Sheppard, looking back on this incident and knowing what you know now, would you have handled this? Would you have done anything differently? Would you have handled this differently? Would you have responded to Deputy Plunkett any differently?
No.
Okay.
No, nothing at
I'm
all.
Good.
I would like
you
to
guys
add
have
to
have
that.
A good night. Thanks for the show.
Keep listening, Marshall. Keep listening.
Hey, and feel free to call back when you hear something else that sparks your ire.
Yes. I would like to add throw a couple of things out there around that. One,
okay.
I think as we continue in the way that we are in terms of society, in terms of everyone having cameras, everyone filming the police, and more people feeling emboldened, particularly these millennials, to...
you said entitled?
Well, that's another...
Oh, you said emboldened. I'm sorry. I heard entitled. You said millennials. I heard entitled. Sorry.
You're talking to a Gen Xer, so I get it.
Yeah.
But, these are the types of interactions that law enforcement officers are likely to have with people because they're feeling that they know their rights.
Sure.
We have a lot of Know Your Rights workshops that people walk out of, and they're like, okay, well, you can't do this.
Am I being
can't do
detained?
that.
Yeah,
being
no, I
detained?
saw
I'm
one
not
on Fairfax the other day when I was at the Kanye pop-up store right up the street. There was a Know Your Rights. I started to step in and hear what I could hear and get some laughs.
But what happened to Plunkett coming up and saying, hey, I got a call on you, or you've been sitting here a while, can I see your license, registration?
Well, okay, you're right. And see, unfortunately, we can't get him on the show because this whole thing is still active and open for him, so he can't talk about it.
Is that not what he's supposed to do, or is that not what officers are supposed to do?
That is one approach. It is.
Is that not the correct approach?
Well, here's the thing, though. Not having seen, because we got your perspective, we got your video. You're sitting here. He didn't have a video running that we've seen, and he's not here to talk about what he saw. As a cop, when you roll up on a situation, your life is the one that, you're worried about protecting your life, right?
So what happened to his body-worn camera, and what happens to his
I don't know today if they had that then, or if it was
2014,
issued or whatever.
This was the sheriff's department.
So they maybe didn't even have that, but
they definitely had digital tape recorders. What happened to his recorder?
Well, okay, if he was issued that equipment and he was within policy with that, then
he definitely issued that equipment.
Then he's out of pocket for not running that. But to answer your question, though, he can approach that stop the way he feels like he needs to. For his safety and to maintain a tactical advantage. We do have a call, but were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think we're going to have to give on both sides a little bit in terms of these sorts of interactions, because I don't see going forward how this is going to stop when you have a generation and groups of people who are researching their rights, researching, what is legal, what is not legal, not to mention just using television shows and copying what they see on Law and Order.
I hope that's not how they're doing research.
But no, I'm serious though, because I've seen it. Like I when I've covered protests and different things, and I've seen people say, you can't do that, you can't.
Right, you can't arrest me because you haven't read my rights yet.
And I'm not saying that they're wrong. I'm not saying that
Sometimes
what they're reciting is wrong, but it's just that interaction.
Well, you're right, because that does cause problems. We have a call. I don't want to leave them on hold too long. Caller, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Stephanie. I'm calling from the Canoga Park, Winnetka area.
Okay. Hey, welcome to the Right Along Radio Show, Stephanie.
How you doing?
All right. What's on your mind?
I have a question for the detainee.
Wow. The detainee.
I always wondered.
Like he's a Gitmo.
No.
He's a PI, for God's sake.
What goes through a person's mind when they're faced with having a gun pointed at their head? And in that situation, I'm curious because I saw the video briefly, and I apologize because when I watched this video, the commercials come, so I'm missing part of the conversation. And if you answer these questions, I apologize. I know the earlier caller touched on it, but I was curious when the officer was stating to keep your hands visible, when you removed the earpiece, I guess to me, having a gun pointed at your head, was it really that imperative to remove the earpiece? I mean, first of all, let me just say thank God that he didn't shoot you, because I felt like that cop wanted to shoot somebody. And but I'm just curious, and you can answer, and I'll hang up after. But why was it important or imperative to remove that earpiece and move your hands, especially if an officer with a gun at your head?
Right. Why didn't he just freeze? In other words, why wouldn't you just freeze if somebody's got a gun pointed at you? Right.
Right.
Okay. Hey, thanks for the call, Stan. We'll give you an answer off the air. Thank you.
Here's the answer to that. I had two earpieces in, right? One on my left ear, one on my right ear. The earpiece in my left ear is, of course, facing the driver's door window where Plunkett is standing, correct?
Sure.
All right. If I said I didn't hear you, I'm removing the earpiece. I'm still in plain view of him, just my arm went from here to here. Okay.
So he saw your hand move. Now
he saw everything.
It was facing.
Where was your hand initially, though?
Right on the door.
On the door or on the?
You can
on
see
the door.
It was right on the door.
My hand is on the door. My hand comes straight up. I take my earpiece off, and he draws his weapon, and the weapon is pointed at my head.
We already had it drawn.
No, he raises the weapon within.
Go ahead. Sorry.
He raises the weapon within 2 seconds.
Okay.
In court, they said it took 6 seconds. But who wants the gun pointed at them within 2 seconds or 6 seconds, irregardless, at their temple with the gun in fire mode, finger on the trigger, and the hammer cocked? Who? The lady asked, how did I feel? What I felt was that He's unstable from the very beginning when he put his hands on me, and I told him he was shaking, which makes me nervous. So, of course, I'm already explaining that I'm nervous because he's nervous, and he makes me unstable, right? And so when he brings the gun up, it's like he's gonna kill me. He's gonna kill me.
And so, but okay, and with that in mind, why not leave the earpiece in place? We got another caller
No,
too.
this was after.
After you already done that.
Talking about after taking the earpiece.
Okay.
out.
I just want to add
That's when he
something
puts the gun to my head.
right quick, and this is really important. When I do go online and I try to cruise through those comments, I see a lot of people saying he never told him to get out the car. He never told him to get out the car. I had to watch the video like 5 times myself before I even caught where the deputy said get out the car and then reached to try to unlock the door, but realized that the door was locked. But even if I'm watching the video and it took me that many times to watch it to catch that he said it, I could only imagine somebody standing there with a gun.
Right, maybe
you got
missed
your
that.
earpiece and you might have missed it. So I'm trying to look at it from both sides. I could see how maybe Mr. Sheppard did not hear him say that because I had to watch the video multiple times to catch it myself.
Understood.
And if you notice in the video, I asked him, do you want me to step out? And I didn't know you had to beg for your life, but I'm asking him, please holster his weapon. I never used profanity. They said I was belligerent.
Right. Oh, yeah, I'm glad you said that. I'm going to talk about the profanity in a second, but let's get to this caller.
Okay.
Caller, what's your name and where you calling from?
My name's Chris. I'm from Connecticut.
Chris from Connecticut. Say it with your chest. What's happening, man? Thanks for calling in.
Great show, by the way. I just want to, for the PI, I feel like everybody, the internet, social media, and most law enforcement, people are putting this guy under a microscope.
This guy being the deputy or this guy being the PI?
This guy being the PI.
Okay.
They put him under a microscope. And yes, for argument's sake, he shouldn't have said holster your weapon, and he shouldn't have took the earpiece out. But what everybody's missing is the point that this was a trigger-happy police officer. I feel like even if the PI didn't say holster your weapon or anything like that, it still would have transpired into. He probably would have still ended up. It would have went the way it went regardless.
Well, we call him trigger happy, but nobody got shot.
Yeah.
But he that's clearly that police officer. I'm pretty sure that's not his first time running up on somebody like that.
When you look at the expression on Plunkett's face, you see the vein in his neck is bulging out. I mean, hatred is right there. It's all. It's
is it hatred or is it adrenaline?
No, it's not adrenaline. It's hatred.
That's hatred, and
that's hatred. What he had.
As a black male myself, like I feel like most black people in America, we could identify with that, and this situation is this helps the conversation of racism. It's not just white cops that's out here doing these things. It's cops that are black, cops that are Hispanic.
Chris, I'm glad you said that because that's a point I wanted to make. You know, the funny thing about this and unusual thing about this is that if you play this back and look at it, you will see that for probably the first time in the history of American policing with a controversial police video, there's not a single white person in this video at all. Everybody in this video is a person of color of one shade or another.
Well, except for Bonnie Hanson.
And I just have
is she?
She looks like a white girl.
I don't know.
She does look like.
Is she?
I just had
Okay, I didn't catch it. I thought she was Latina, maybe married to a white deputy. That happens.
And also for the PI, like, what's your mental state after this? Like, can you sleep at night? Are you over it, or are you angry? Like how does this? Like, what's your view on law enforcement after this situation?
I'll answer that for you with no problem.
Hey, Chris, we got to take that answer off the air. Thanks for calling, man.
At times, I have sleepless nights. I have family members in law enforcement.
Uh-huh.
I have in both sheriff, PDs, marshals, and it's rough to sleep because you keep seeing what happened and you keep visualizing what could happen the next time.
Was that the first time anybody ever pointed a gun at you?
No.
Okay. So did you have a similar response in the past?
It was with the sheriff again. It was with the sheriff
That's an
again.
occupational hazard, apparently.
It was with the sheriff again, and they tried to say I was attempting to burglarize this officer's house.
Wow.
You have to clarify that statement, Mr. Sheppard, because I don't think that people understand that some of the people you do surveillance on for workers' comp fraud are police officers.
And that's why you wouldn't put the code 5 out, because they might give them up.
Exactly.
Now
Hey, we have another
That's
caller,
like
though. Let's jump on this.
You don't tell the owner of the hen house you're coming to raid the hen house.
Right.
Right. Caller, what's your name and where you calling from?
What's up, Holt? It's Jeff Brown. How you feeling?
Jeff, downtown Brown. What's going on, man? Thanks for calling in.
No worries. Hi, Gil.
Hey, Jeff.
Well, hi, Jeff.
Hey, sister, how you feeling?
I'm good.
Question. A few minutes ago, you all were discussing people researching their rights as if with the recent goings on, now isn't a good time, as if somehow that's wrong. I would imagine, and I'm one of those crazy people that you know how online where it says I accept before when
You actually read that end user's license agreement?
Yes.
Wow.
I read those terms and conditions.
You can make a living doing that because nobody else wants to do it. You can read it for people.
No. You know what? And I'm glad a few of them that I haven't signed. My point is, that's for stuff online. Shouldn't I know about my rights with an individual standing outside my car with a weapon?
Sure.
I think that you should. I wasn't saying it if it was a bad thing, but what I was trying to add to the conversation is that this is the direction that we're going in terms of American society. People who are concerned about police misconduct, police killings, contact with the police, especially in the African American community and the Latino community, are sort of arming themselves with knowledge, right? They're going to these workshops that, attorneys are having. I know in Los Angeles, Nana Jumphy, who's a well-known civil rights attorney, has many Know Your Rights workshops, as well as other attorneys, just to help give people this information. Then you get this information, and some people, and I mentioned millennials because they seem to be the group that feels the most
entitled.
I didn't say that, but they just, so
you can say that.
they
I got a few of them in my house. You can say that.
Oh, bless you, honey, bless you.
Oh no, bless them. I'm the boss.
They're the ones that when you have this knowledge, then people want to go out and they feel like, okay, oh, what are you stopping me for? I'm on my bike, I'm riding, you stop me. Oh, you can't stop me, I wasn't doing anything. And I understand both sides, but I'm just saying, when you have this going on in society, you're going to have more and more of these types of interactions between civilians and law enforcement officers. And I don't know if law enforcement officers talk about this on their side, but we can't always get mad and pull out our guns on folks and put it at their heads. Because if I'd have been Mr. Sheppard, I can tell you now, I would have passed out. Like, I would have totally freaked.
And
sure.
Rightly so. And the other thing is, it almost sounds like the onus isn't on the professional.
Well, no, and we said that earlier, that deputy is in charge of that contact, and that deputy is one who gets held accountable for how it turns out, win, lose, or draw.
And I say this to anyone. I say this to any police officer. Put your mama behind the wheel. How would you like for your mama to come home and say that some dude drew down on her? Now, and again, I'm just a prior service United States Marine. I am not a police officer. In that same given situation, with an individual whose hands are in plain sight, the 10th of a second that it would have taken to raise your weapon from down by your side, I'm not saying don't unholster it. Unholster it, take the safety off, and hold it down by your side. So that if something funky goes off, all I got to do is bend my elbow and let loose in this car, if that's what I'm feeling. The concept of aiming a gun at this man's head in less than 10 feet was about nothing other than intimidation. That was one of them black socks to gym class moves, meaning the dude on the outside of the car was probably bullied in high school.
Because he wore black socks to gym class, right?
There's a lot of cats I know like that. Some of them that I remember distinctly, who used to be bullied, who used to be pushed around, and some of them who were bullied. That I go home to Chicago, and they're now police officers. And these are not stories that are exclusive to me. I have friends who have the same story.
But you know what? The finger on the trigger thing was the tactical part I think we were talking about. There was no way. As both of us are police firearms instructors, both of us do this for a living. We understand that that was a bad move, and it looked like, and it was not born of any training or any acceptable procedure. It was about, I'm sorry, it did look like it was an intimidation move to me.
What about him not listening to Sergeant Hollis when Sergeant Hollis
right. That was
I'm just
other
curious
issue.
because
did that not look like excessive force?
Well, he didn't use the force.
Safety's off.
He didn't use force. I mean, he didn't apply any force toward you. But I know what you're saying.
Well,
but,
let's give it the proper euphemism for unnecessarily having a gun in my face. Because I know a little bit about firearms, and I was watching this man. I know a little bit about tactical activity, being a fire service Marine. I know a little bit about having a gun pointed at me from growing up in Chicago. I really did not see why, other than, again, many police officers do not want cooperation. They want complete and utter submission, almost to the point of a ball gag and a safe word.
Wow, they were going to bring out the GIMP?
They want you to bring out the GIMP, dude. That's what it really is. It's not a conversation. The brother in the car, in my opinion, he wasn't any more defensive than he should have been. Okay? I don't think that the concept of positive demeanor, especially in the light of what's going on, the concept of warm, wonderful greeting should be on the lips of anybody of color behind the wheel when an individual comes up. If it was me, of course, I passed the attitude test. I was in the Marines. I don't move until I'm told. I ask permission before I do. Of course, that didn't help the dude that got shot in front of his family. But I understand that the police officer, when he deals with me, I make sure he understands that I understand that he's in charge here, regardless. If I got a warrant and he has to take me in and tow my car,
that's what it boils down to very often. That's what we say. Comply now, complain later. There's a complaint process.
Yes. But if I don't, should my life be in question?
No, you're absolutely right. That should not be the wages should not be death for that, for sure.
Thank you, and that's what we're all saying. There is no. It seems like certain police officers, certain individuals, are trying to find some ground for the dude outside the car to stand on. He doesn't have any. He does not have any. There was no reason for him to put his weapon in this dude's face.
Well, and again, I really wish we knew what information he was working with. I don't have access to the court documents. I know you know because you've been, Mr. Sheppard, you've been involved in the case, and so you know what was in the reports, et cetera, et cetera.
Holt, I hate to cut you off. You are a police officer, decorated, very long time retired. Tell me 3 things you think, I'm not asking you what you know, you think that could be in that report that would make that man draw down on this dude with a gun in his face.
I said earlier in the show that possibly there's been a string of burglaries in the area. The vehicle matched the description of that. Mr. Sheppard himself matched the description of that. We don't know what information the deputy's working with. We know he didn't get a radio call, though. We know that.
Well,
Now, if I'm standing 5 feet from a burglar who's breaking in houses, he's not compliant, and I'm a police officer, please tell me how this doesn't make any sense. This dude's not complying with me. I can't see his hands. I pull my weapon and bend my arm at the elbow so that my weapon is going to go right, my rounds are going to go right through this door.
Well,
how?
The other thing is you don't tie your hand up by grabbing your arm. When he grabbed your arm like that, that was another thing that's tactically unsound because you don't tie up with somebody while you got your gun out. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's no defending that, man. It's poor tactics, poor training.
Why did he even grab Mr. Sheppard's arm to begin with? That was another question that thousands of people had. I mean, the way that the deputy just immediately grabbed his wrist, it was like, why?
The biggest question. Here's the biggest question. If you fuck up bad enough with me working at Rouse, you'll get fired.
Sure.
This dude here, at the most right now, is being paid to sit out on up at Lake Pyramid on a boat. That's bullshit.
Maybe it's just a jet ski. Maybe he's only got a jet ski. But
okay, well, whatever he has, his ass should be fired. He should have spent his last day in a uniform, because when he put his gun in that dude's face, he was no longer a police officer. He was just some dude with a gun in a dude's face.
Well, man, I appreciate your input.
Thank you,
I'm glad you called, and thanks for the continued support.
Love you very much, Holt.
Hey, man, appreciate
Take care, Gil.
All
Good
right.
night. Hope
All
you don't
right.
flip up and bust your head open on the sink.
I'm going to be all right. I'm going to be all right.
God damn. I love that guy. All right, man. Thanks, thanks, Jeff.
Can I touch on something?
Yeah, and then we're going to go to a break. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, let me touch on this, because people get misled when you say the vehicle was stopped. Vehicle wasn't stopped. We covered that, right?
Vehicle was parked already.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so your deputy's out of line. So the next thing,
I don't understand why the deputy's contacting him. That's
right. The deputy doesn't operate.
That's the key here.
I just don't understand.
Until
I have that information, none of it makes sense.
Let me give you guys some more info.
Why can't you just tell us why he stopped? What does the court record say?
What reason did he give for stopping you?
Why did he contact you?
He didn't have a reason. What their defense tried to say, that there were multiple burglaries in the area.
Boom. There you go. I didn't even know that.
Wait. There are multiple burglaries in the area, right? The only vehicle that fit the burglaries was mine. Where's the paperwork? Where's any X cards? Anything?
Right. Something that says that's been happening. Sure.
And when we asked the Lieutenant Sheppard on the stand, how many burglaries were there? Did you catch anybody? No. So how do you know what the burglars look like?
Well, maybe somebody saw him, though. Home video, etc.
No home video. Nobody saw him. And Lieutenant Sheppard says, well, I don't know. But their attorney, who puts on a great show, says there are multiple burglaries, but he has no documentation to put up there on the screen. So
that looks weak then. That looks like somebody's making that up.
That's what their excuse was.
Okay.
But
I'm afraid that's not good enough.
It's not good enough, right?
Good enough,
okay,
right.
so that's what we're telling them, and we're trying to tell a jury. And we asked them, does Mr. Sheppard fit that profile? No. Did you fingerprint Mr. Sheppard? Run his print? No.
Right.
Did you ask any of the neighbors, did they see Mr. Sheppard get out of his vehicle? No.
Right.
So
because the deputy, because all that deputy knows is what he sees when he pulls up. And if they did have a flyer out, a wanted flyer or whatever,
they didn't have.
That's the problem. So look, we're gonna go to break, and we're gonna our producer, the poetess, is graciously giving us some extra time here. So we're going into overtime here on the Right Along Radio Show. And 323-293-3375. Right now we're going to go to break, and we will be back, and we'll talk about why profanity is sometimes acceptable when used by a law enforcement officer in certain situations. All right, and that was Killing in the Name by Rage Against the Machine. Outstanding. It just seemed appropriate tonight. So we're going to jump back into our topic here, but we're starting off with a call. Caller, what's your name and where you calling from?
This is the famous Eddie Goodman.
Eddie Goodman. All right, former guest. He's one of our first guests on this show. Get him, Eddie.
Man,
the famous Eddie Goodman.
Check this out. I feel where the brother's coming from, because I was in West Hollywood one time, and I stopped at the Fat Burgers to get something to eat.
Boom.
And I went to the public park to get something to eat. And I'm a messy eater, so I had the napkin in my shirt so I wouldn't spill nothing. Deputy pulled up behind me, jumped out of the car, walked up to the driver's side, and asked me, "What are you doing here?" And I'm eating my burger, and I'm like, I'm having lunch. I'm eating my thing. He said, "Well, I see that you don't have no plates on your car." I said, "Yeah, I just bought the car."
Yeah.
He was like, "Well, do you have a bill of sales? And can I see your driver's license and bill of sales?" I said, "Yeah." So I pulled out my driver's license and bill of sales. I gave it to him, and then so he looked and got the VIN number. He went back to the car, he ran my license, and whatever case may be. So I guess he figured out the car wasn't stolen and whatnot, whatever. And then he came back, and then he gave me my bill of sales and the driver's license. But my whole thing is, the problem that I had is that I was already parked, eating. Clearly I was eating at a public park.
Right.
And he just pulls up behind me and jumps out and asks, Clear word, just like he did this brother. What are you doing here? It's been my problem I have. I know they don't do this to white folks. They only do this to Latinos and African Americans. You don't just roll up on white people eating at the park in a car just because it doesn't have plates.
You do in West Hollywood.
Yeah, I was going to say that. That's what I was going to say.
I have to be a little honest about that situation right there because they have some shady things that take place in public parks in West Hollywood.
I was going to say that because where that Fatburger is.
It involves white men, black men, Latino men, Asian men. And
just because you appeared to be in that car by yourself did not mean that you didn't have somebody else in the car whose head was below the dashboard. So West Hollywood, I was exploring West Hollywood.
No shade on West Hollywood, but that's a known fact.
Wow,
that's just the truth.
Wow, Eddie,
the truth is the truth.
What you doing, Eddie?
To get something from Fatburgers, and I didn't want to drive and eat, so I just pulled.
Well, I understand, but understand that in that area, you're likely, and
I think that's Eddie's story.
Phrasing jammed up. You're likely to get jammed up in West Hollywood if you're not careful.
He's sticking to his story.
Let me tell you, the first and last time, well, I don't know, I can't predict the future, that I got pulled over, by an officer.
Well, that's all I got.
In Los.
Hey, thanks, Eddie.
On La Cienega going into Beverly Hills. This was, I want to say, the last day of April, like April 30th.
Right.
And there's a reason why I remember the date.
I was wondering.
Is because my registration had expired 3 days prior. Okay. Now, I'm so happy I'm having a conversation with former law enforcement officers because y'all may be able to enlighten me on this, although some other folks have too. Anyway, you know how when somebody's tags expire, and let's say they expire in April.
Right.
But you pull them over on April 30th.
Yeah, you can't tell that.
And you can't. How can you tell that, right?
You can't tell that.
Right? But he pulled me over anyway.
You run it.
Yeah, you can run it, but you can't tell just visually.
He couldn't tell visually.
You had to run it, sure.
Right. So anyway, he pulls me over, put my hands on the steering wheel, because I watch TV, right? I know I'm supposed to do. And he asked me for my license, my registration. And I happened to be on the phone at the time. And I have the kind of car where you can be on the phone and hands-free.
Okay.
And I told the person to stay on the phone.
Right.
And I said at the top of my lungs, I'm reaching in the glove compartment.
Wow.
I am pulling out the... And he's like, ma'am, you don't have to do all that. And I'm like,
I was like, oh, you
yes,
brought
I
jokes,
do.
huh?
Yes, I do. And then a couple of days after that, there was this person got killed. I want to say it was in the Midwest or something.
With the Facebook Live?
Yeah, it was something like that. Yeah, I think, and I said to people, this is why I did that during my traffic stop, because I just want to make it perfectly clear. You're asking me to get these things. I don't know anyone who drives around with their car registration in their purse or whatever, so it's in the glove compartment. But I wanted to be so clear with the officer, like, I am reaching to get it. I don't have any weapons in my car, nothing. And he was so annoyed with me.
I bet he was.
But I was just trying to
Because you know what, to that officer, if you're doing that to me, the implication is you think that I'm a trigger-happy murderer and that I can't be trusted and that you have to keep people on the phone and that you have to speak to me loudly and simply so that I can comprehend what you're doing.
I just know his boss is Charlie Beck, and I don't take no chances.
What's wrong with that?
The average person is going to take offense to that.
Why do they take offense to it?
Because of what it implies about that person as an individual.
But that's what your department's created.
That's what I think. That's where we are today with society.
Whoa. I don't disagree with that. In fact, I'm one of the main people who will sit right here and say that law enforcement is reaping what it has sown.
That's what.
But that doesn't mean that I'm not going to feel a certain kind of way about it.
Well,
right? That I may understand why you're doing that, but it's still offensive to me.
Well,
because guess what? That Korean lady that follows you around in the liquor store in Figueroa might say the same thing.
Well, she wouldn't be following me because I don't go in the liquor stores.
Okay,
but
well,
you
I'm just
understand what
there.
he's saying, Mr. Sheppard.
Mr. Sheppard can come in here with his fist balled up, but that's okay because mine's staying balled up too. That's all right. So listen.
We're gonna talk about Deputy
profanity. Talk about
profanity.
cussing. Let's talk about some cussing real quick. And I got into this with my former chief because we had an officer who told somebody, "Don't fucking move, or I'm gonna shoot you," or "Don't move, or don't fucking move, or I'm gonna shoot you." Don't move, or I'm gonna fucking shoot you. Something like that. All right. And the chief wanted me to discipline that officer because he didn't feel that those F-bombs, no matter which order he dropped them, were appropriate conduct for an officer. And there actually has been, I don't know if it's a court case or just a study, that shows that in certain situations, the use of profanity is acceptable if it is likely to lessen the chance that you'll actually have to shoot somebody. So I'd rather say, hey, I'll fucking shoot you, as opposed to really having to shoot you, okay? Just like you said that the man pointed his gun at you, that the lady said, let me tase him, but she didn't really tase you, right? I would rather be able to use that, and sometimes it's an attention getter. Sometimes it lets you know where my head is, that I'm not playing with you at this point. I'm serious enough to cuss at you, okay? And if that's going to get your attention and convey to you that I will drop the hammer on you, I'd rather do that, and I'd rather cuss at you than actually have to than be polite about shooting you.
So civilians can do the same thing, then, I assume, right? So
cuss?
if me having an interaction with law enforcement officers means that I need to curse at you so that there's a lesser chance that you and I have an altercation, then it should go both ways.
That's called escalation, though.
You better.
So when civilians, it's escalation.
Right, because the civilian's not running the scenario.
But for you guys, it's de-escalation.
Right, because the civilian is not in the position of control or responsibility with that contact. So you're not in charge. That's why you can't tell me to holster my gun and I'm going to do it.
Because Plunkett's not de-escalating anything.
I didn't say it always worked.
Plunkett's
I didn't say it always worked. I'm saying it's used with the idea of establishing control and seriousness of the situation.
I'm going to try it out and tell the officer, George Holt told me that cursing helps to de-escalate situations.
He didn't escalate it much?
No, he didn't do much to de-escalate the situation, is what I'm saying.
I
didn't say it always worked.
But neither did you.
That's true.
I'm the one not cursing. I'm the one saying please.
I know, but I remember.
Were you doing that just because you knew you were recording?
That's the thing. You had the advantage of knowing.
No. But even though he
knew when that tape was rolling, he's going to be sitting on a ride-along radio show one day, and Deputy Plunkett didn't know that he was going to be talked about in his absence today.
But when you sent me the link and I watched the video, that was the very first thing that struck me was, why is this guy arguing? You know, I've been on surveillance before as a PI doing different things, and I've been contacted by law enforcement before. And it's been very simple. Hey, what are you doing sitting here? How are you doing, officer? I'm a private investigator working on a surveillance. My ID and shit are in my back pocket.
Right.
What do you want me to do? We called it into the department. What do you want me to do? Okay, let me see your driver's license. And you're okay, thank you. They left, for God's sakes. They just walked away.
But in this situation, we talked about why you wouldn't want to do that in this situation.
Exactly. Why didn't Plunkett just ask for ID when he walked up? That's policy. Why didn't he ask for ID?
Well, he hadn't figured out if you were doing anything illegal yet. I think he
let's clarify, though. Let's clarify policy versus procedure. Because policy is codified that you will follow step A, B, C, D, and E. And there are certain things that are just procedure because they're considered to be best practice. So policy you can be held accountable for. Procedure, not quite so much. So maybe that's the procedure that he didn't follow. But policy and procedure are not interchangeable.
Doing this with your gun, that's probably out of policy. My guess is that's
probably out of policy. We're talking about the initial contact when how come he didn't ask him for this, that, or the other.
Right, Bill. Because he didn't give the deputy a chance. The guy walked up and said whatever the deputy said, and I don't remember. And I wish I'd been paying attention because I thought it was a different video. Because that was the point that I wanted to make, was that when I first saw the video, the first thing I noticed, the deputy says one thing, and then you kind of went off on him.
That's not true. That's not true.
But you had already started the contact.
No, that's not true. You can go back and look at the video again.
Right, let's play it.
I said, what can I do for you?
Can we cue that video up while the caller comes in, and we can maybe play the first 30 seconds of it?
He could have said.
It's just the first 5 seconds, the first 10 seconds.
Let me ask you this.
But let's get it queued up.
Said, can I see your license registration?
No, we're going to play it. We're going to play it. We'll get to the bottom of it. Let's take the call first.
What can I do for you?
Caller, what's your name and where you calling from?
Hey, Holt, it's Jeff Brown again.
All right, he circled back around.
Yeah, I had to circle back around because y'all messing up my cannabis time.
Caller, what's your name and what's your exact address and location right now?
Right. But after November 8th, though, that might not be so much of an issue.
Well, let's see. He's in Colorado right now, so it doesn't matter.
There's a trail of edibles up my driveway in Pasadena. See if you can find it. Now, what seems to be here is that, and this is pervasive amongst everybody's attitude who looks at this in some type of vacuum, that the onus of professionalism is supposed to be in the car. I'm sorry. I've been around security who are prior FBI members. LAP, a lot of off-duty LAPD does security for celebrities.
Sure.
And when I see these dudes handle situations, they handle situations level-headedly, very fairly, and they are the ones who are supposed to be the professionals.
Yes.
This brother
Absolutely.
here who was in the car. I'm sorry, brother. What was your name? I'm sorry, I didn't get your name.
Ken Sheppard.
Yes, Mr. Sheppard, who was in the car, just happens to be a professional. He just happens to be one.
Right, because he could have been anybody in that car.
He could have been anybody in that car, and if he is anybody in that car, he's supposed to be given the benefit of the doubt that he's dealing with a professional. These dudes are like cowboys in the Old West. Hey, man, you call me a liar, I'm going to pull my gun out. That's the whole point. Why is the gun first? Okay?
Right.
That's what everybody wants to know is if this job is that dangerous, and again, it could be something to do with training because, as you know, I write for the D.L. Hughley radio show, and D.L. brought up some very interesting points. All around the country, everywhere you look, it takes longer to become a beautician than it does to become a police officer.
I see, who else said that? Colin Kaepernick said something like that, too. You know what? It's wrong in that all those hours ain't the same. Okay? So the hours, like Chris from Connecticut called in earlier. Chris is a firefighter. Okay. And Chris goes to work and he does his 12-hour shifts, whatever firefighters do. And there's somebody else doing another job for that same 12 hours, but it's not as rigorous, doesn't require the same amount of skill. Also, there's not as much vetting to get into that. And hey, just like this, man, you know that your time in the Marine Corps would be different than someone else's equal amount of time in the Air Force, right?
Yeah, but you're making my point for me.
No. I'm saying that the law enforcement officer who goes through that's a hell of a law enforcement goes through 6 months of training, right? Now it's 7, I think, with the post academy stuff.
Okay.
That's a hell of a 7 months. That ain't no 7 months sitting on a chair learning how to shampoo, press, and curl. That's like a hard ass 6 months. And a lot of people don't make it, and the graduation rate is a lot lower than people at beautician school. And that's not the knock on beauticians, okay? I'm sure they're very lovely people. Depends,
well,
not always.
The knock then, here's where you're making my point. If you go through this rigorous training, I understand rigorous training. I got a bachelor's degree equivalent in electronics in the Marines that should have took 4 years. I got it in 9 months.
Yeah, see?
They ain't playing around.
Right.
Exactly. So
you were drinking from a fire hose.
If they ain't playing around in the academy, then what the hell is this going on in the street?
Well,
what you're telling me is that this training is intense and it's labor intensive and it's heavy and that's why there's less hours. Well, if that's the case, we should have less people getting shot.
Well, it's not that there's less hours because here's the thing. So I go through the academy and they used to get mad at me about this because I felt like when I got somebody out of the academy and they came and sat in my roll call, as far as I'm concerned, that fucker's not even a cop yet because he went through 6-7 months and now he's sitting here. To me, you're 7 months removed from flipping burgers. Or whatever. Maybe he used to be a beautician or he did tax returns or whatever. You're 7 months removed from that. You're not even a cop yet. You now have to go through another 16 weeks in the field training program where you ride with another officer or a series of officers who evaluate you on a daily basis. And then after that, then you got to be by yourself for another, probation's a year. Right. Mm-hmm. So you got a 1 year probationary period, at which point you can get fired for anything or nothing at all. So that's part of the selection process. It's the selection process that gives you a lot of the results that we get. And our results are overwhelmingly positive. Keep in mind, we just said this earlier. Today, Jeff, hell, since the last time you called in, there have been thousands of contacts that American law enforcement has had with the American public. And out of, say, 17,000 contacts since you called last, it's quite possible that none of those resulted in gunfire or anybody's death.
Absolutely, Holt. But you know what the problem is with that?
What's that?
That you're dealing in a profession where 10 way to goes equals 1 shit.
Oh yeah, sure. Oh yeah.
Okay, so
sure. Less room for error.
Let's put this ratio you're discussing over airline traffic.
Right.
If in the last year 1,100 planes fell out of the sky, would we be sitting here talking about the 22,000 other ones that didn't?
No, we would not. You're absolutely right.
And let me add some. I would like to add something in there as well. If there was no video and it was just Mr. Sheppard's word against the deputy's word, who are you going to believe if we didn't have this video to look at?
I'd still believe Mr. Sheppard because of how many times that I've been pulled over and actually beat up by ain't shit cops. So the concept, here's what nobody really wants to look at, is that there are bad doctors, there are bad lawyers.
Right. Yeah.
Apparently, I'm going to jump out there and say it since it seems like nobody wants to. There are some bad cops doing some bad police work if the first thing you go to is your gun for every situation. There's no way. I don't understand. In the words of Ernie Hudson in the movie Sugar Hill, would somebody please tell me why we are kissing this boy's ass? Would somebody please tell me why? Every time it's a police officer who is in the wrong, he gets this big a benefit of the doubt. This is the problem that good cops go through. Good cops are the problem. I say it all the time. Bad cops are the symptom. When a dude does something like this, where he is, in my opinion, smoking gun wrong, there is not one cop who cares about his wife, cares about his mother. Holt, put your son in that car. Your son does not have "my father is a retired police officer" tattooed on his forehead.
Right.
Put him in that car. Does he deserve to have a weapon in his
No,
face?
you're absolutely right. But I'm answering a question that you posed because I don't think it was a rhetorical question. Why do these officers get the benefit of the doubt?
Yes.
Because if officers felt that if they had to take action against someone, whether it was physical force or whether it was deadly force by shooting somebody, and you did not think you would get the benefit of the doubt, a lot of officers wouldn't be doing things out there that we need them to be doing. A lot of officers would be like, why would I want to get involved in that if I'm automatically going to be considered to be a homicide suspect? If I'm automatically not going to get any kind of benefit of the doubt, why would I want to put myself out there like that? Why would I want to do this job or do it in an aggressive manner?
Can I answer that question?
Okay.
One, because it's your job. UPS is hiring. Two,
they don't pay enough, man. This job does not pay enough. If every time I had to shoot somebody, I thought I was going to be treated as a murder suspect, that's not a job that I would want. Okay. That would be a thankless job, and there wouldn't be enough money they could pay. Well, maybe there would be enough, but they wouldn't give me that much to make it worthwhile to sit through that.
Well, I believe that there are individuals like myself. There are other individuals who would take this job under those conditions, because the pendulum has to at some point swing the other way. At some point, we got to start saying, as people, I don't know when it happened, but we are at a point now where police are way over the line. They are way over the line. And
has that changed, or is it just exposed now?
I don't believe it's changed at all. I believe, again,
okay.
Yes, sir. It is just exposed now, especially when you look at where policing in America comes from.
Right. So, I think we've had that discussion before.
Absolutely.
But you still, Jeff, if you thought, because here's the thing, it is not out of an obligation as a city employee that cops do things like run into burning buildings to save people. It's not out of things like that the cops go and get involved in the North Hollywood shootout. It is a sense of duty. It is a sense of duty above and beyond. No. That's why you get medals for that, above and beyond stuff. And if cops are not going to go above and beyond, if going above and beyond puts them in an unnecessary peril of losing their job, public scrutiny, et cetera, there's got to be some leeway in there. There's got to be some sort of benefit of the doubt given to an officer.
There's too much.
They decide that, okay, maybe there's too much, but you can't completely take it away and treat every officer who shoots somebody like they're a gangbanger. They just did a drive-by.
I didn't say every officer. Let me be very clear. Not every officer. Just every officer on video who decides, an officer on a video who decides to shoot a kid that has a toy gun. An officer on video who shoots at a man who's laying in the street with his arms up that says, "Look, I'm out here with a person with special needs." Right. That dude right there, he needs the benefit of the doubt of the guy that ran in the building. You don't see the difference between them.
Oh no, I do. Sure. Okay, but how do you break that down though? How do you say, well, this case we're going to treat it like this, this case we're going to treat it like that?
I tell you exactly how you do it. By the damn video camera. If I see you two, if put it this way, you should be fired in my opinion, as a police officer, if it takes 5 of you with guns to disarm one dude. Holt, I'm telling you, I can name, okay, I'll name them. You give me Shang, the comedian, and Dannon Green, the comedian, and Joe Torre, the comedian. One dude, give him a baseball bat. He got one swing, and we're going to be on his ass like ants on a picnic. Well, and that's just dudes.
Okay.
That's just dudes. We're not police officers.
Sure.
We're not trained.
And you know what, though? But the thing is, and I agree with that, but you're talking about doing that one time. You're not talking about being prepared to do it over and over and over again and always having to come out on top.
Brother Holt.
Yes, sir.
As a family man, I have to be prepared for that 24/7.
Well, yeah, you have a slightly different mindset than most people do. Though,
okay.
You know.
Then most people shouldn't be police officers.
That's absolutely right. Most people will not be.
Okay,
most people who want to do it don't get to do it. Okay, so that's the absolute truth.
I think I'll say this, and I'll quit hogging up the time. I think that police officers, at least, and I know you said how much money that's going to cost. Well, maybe you need to come with it already, because the Germans have figured it out. The British have figured it out. The Japanese. Have you ever seen Japanese police officers?
Not in person.
Pull a gun on a Japanese police officer. That's your monkey ass. Okay?
Yeah, we talk about martial arts training. Right, extensive martial arts training.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Absolutely. I'm just a dude from 63rd and Damon in Chicago. And I
understood. Well, there's a lot of stuff we could add on there. Then officers should all be fluent in Spanish, and officers should all know how to recognize people with mental illness a little better than they do. That's why the police academy started out being 3 months and now it's 7 months. That's exactly why.
Holt, that's apples and bowling balls, bro.
No, it's all about money and public funding. Who's going to pay for that?
For you to say in the same breath, and I'm just going to tell you that this is the kind of bullshit that regular people get upset with. For you to say that officers should also speak Spanish in order to put that on the same level as officers should know how to handle themselves with their hands. That's not the same thing.
Well, it's all things that got added to the academy, though. But I'm getting the evil eye from Miss Morris. So we're going to have to wrap. But hey, I appreciate your call, man. Thank you. Yeah. So listen, we're probably going to have to revisit this because we've gone like way over our time, and I'm sorry I've kept you guys here beyond the time we originally agreed.
We're going to have to make a new rule. You only get to call once in a show.
Yeah, there you go. So we'll have to have this call screeners on there.
I was about to call you Lester the moderator. You was acting like Lester Holt.
No, you know what? I have a soft spot for that guy. Gil doesn't at all.
It was a waste of 10 minutes.
But do we even have the couple seconds so he can see that while I'm asking?
Oh, yeah. Do we have that? Can we show that first? Yeah, here we go.
What can I do for you since you seem to see that you never
There
heard
we go.
Holster your weapon, man. Holster your weapon. What can I do for you?
There you go.
You can holster my weapon.
Well, you pulling your weapon, so I'm telling you holster your weapon because you got nothing to fear. My hands are clearly in.
Okay, what are you doing?
What am I doing?
Yeah.
I'm sitting here in my vehicle working.
Oh, you're good.
Some kind of PI or something?
All right. So we wanted to settle that to see who made contact with who first. So
the cop didn't even get to say anything.
Right. Well, no, because he immediately started with.
All I did was walked up and said, holster your weapon, man. Holster your weapon. What?
Well, yeah, man. And that's always going to start off shuffling on my foot. So listen, do you have a social media or anything like that, or are you his outlet?
Let me
for
put it to you like this: if you don't want to be, if Mr. Sheppard is following you or contacting you, you in some sort of trouble. Okay, that's the bottom line.
Don't follow him and he won't follow you.
Basically, okay. But yeah, you're not a social media person, right? Because we had a conversation about this. Because I would have to tell him what the stuff was happening on Facebook.
Right, sure, because he's not following that. He's not tracking that.
You know, how I found out about it? The social media. Well, I knew she was putting it out there because I met her way back when I was working on the Ezel Ford case.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And that's when I think we first met, correct? And then we met we talked about the Kerry G. Melvin case, stuff like that. Okay. So social media, I don't do.
Right.
People,
but she's keeping you abreast of what's that this was going to be this was turning into a big deal. I'm sure
people start calling me. They start calling me and telling me, "Hey, man, did you see this?" And I go like, "See what?"
Right.
And it's the article that I have in my folder over there. They go like, they're talking about this cat that you did his case back in '96.
Oh wow, that's when that broke.
Right. And they're like, I said, "Oh, I know the case. They're going to deport the guy." And I think I told you about that. And so people are saying, "Did you know about this?" And I go like, "Yeah,
Right, but all these big name cases that you worked on,
right? And
that's kind of like in a whole other world for you because once you do the case, I'm sure you've moved on, pretty much.
I move on until I'm called about whatever it is.
Right, to go to court.
About. Yeah.
Well, so listen, I'm sure that this thing is not over. Especially you're under appeal. Your case is under appeal, right?
It's going to be under appeal, yes.
Okay, and from what most people see, I think everybody understands that there's more to that the jury did not get to see, and maybe maybe next time around you'll have a better chance to get some of that stuff made admissible. Now, what have Ms. Cannick? What have you seen come as a result of this? That do you have a better appreciation for your for some of what your what's the word I'm looking for? Not necessarily abilities, but what's within your power to put out there to people. I mean, this has got to be huge.
I do. I mean, I have to thank Mr. Sheppard, like I thank everybody who comes to me with their stories, right? Because they're trusting you to put their information out there in the right way, right? So obviously I thank you for trusting me with something as important as that. And I'm grateful that people shared it, that people talked about it. I am grateful for the people who have weighed in on it online and the conversations that I have peeked in on between law enforcement officers and just civilians. I understand the anger. I had to go on Facebook and chastise folks for publishing the deputy's personal information because I don't agree with that and I don't think it's right. That's the kind of stuff that makes me not want to do these kind of stories because you don't want to create additional victims, and that's what I see happening there. And I think, and I'll say it again, if people are upset with what happened, they should go to Sheriff McDonald. They should go to Monterey Park.
That's
they
how
should
you
send
deal with
an email, send an angry tweet or something, but don't put the man's personal phone number and his wife's number and his address on social media because if something bad happens to them
and they had nothing to do with any of it.
Yeah. How would you feel, right?
Right. Well, put your family member in that situation, right?
So, but I'm grateful for all the attention. Thank you for having me on. It is Mr. Sheppard's story. I'm Jasmyne, Jasmyne on Twitter.
That's pretty cool to have your first name as your Twitter handle, and it's
because I got on there early enough, like back in 2000 when it first started, or somewhere around then. And then it's Jasmyne Cannick on Facebook. Do not add my personal page because I can't take any more people. So I have a fan page, Jasmyne Cannick, and my website is Jasmyne Online. But if you just Google Jasmyne Cannick, it comes up. Everything comes up.
All right. Well, you can follow us on Twitter at Right Along Radio, Instagram Right Along Radio Show. And you can send us an email to rightalongradioshow@gmail.com. And Gil, do you want to put out your social media?
Nope.
All right. So don't follow him. Don't follow him. And you can reach either of us through here. Hey, leave your comments on YouTube right down here below. And we will circle back around and we will answer the most pertinent ones next week. If you leave something stupid or hateful, we're not going to talk about that. I'm sorry. But make it relevant and we'll get back to you.
Unless it's really funny.
We appreciate that. Hey, we'll see you guys next week on the Right Along Radio Show.